You're listening to Behind the Bulldogs on News Radio WBRN.
Off the left side to the end zone. Touchdown Bulldogs.
If I'm even having like a bad day on the course or something, I just look down at it and just feel like thankful that I'm able to be out there.
Making sure that we're like where our feet are and we're not thinking about outside distractions.
Welcome in, everybody, to the local sports hour and Behind the Bulldogs right here on WBRN. Brandon Wirt joining you here with my two partners in crime this summer recap series, Tatum Outlaw, Brody Kaiser. Guys, we're back, and I know Tatum's excited. We're talking about fall sports today. Women's soccer first on deck. We got all the sports coming up here in the next couple weeks, but we start with soccer. But first, how are you guys doing post 4th of July?
I'm good. I mean, you kind of said it. I'm really excited. Fall sports are in full swing now for the show and pretty much literally because we're starting our stuff back up. So I'm just excited.
I see your volleyball reference as well, by the way. You snuck that in there. I see. Brody's doing great.
I am doing great. Post 4th of July usually means that we go from peak of summer to winding down summer as we approach the beginning of August for fall sports. So it's good that we got fall sports starting on the show because they're coming up quicker than you might believe.
Yeah, they're going to be here before
Very
we
soon.
know it. And
Very soon.
Don't blink. It's going to go by too fast. That's a country song, right?
Kenny Chesney.
There you go.
It's a great song. I was literally going to make a Kenny Chesney reference, and you brought it up. So good
Beautiful.
for you.
We're on the same page, which means you know this episode's about to be dial-in. Let's get even further dialed with women's soccer. But first, big thanks to Dazos Digital. Target your target audience with the experts at DazosDigital.com. Video, audio streaming, as well as graphic design, web design, and so much more. You can find out more, once again, DazosDigital.com. Let's talk women's soccer here. Overall recap of the season. Overall record of 8-7-4. Still a great season. Now, Final Four-esque for what we were treated to so wonderfully a couple years ago. Not quite the same season, but this team especially battled each and every game of this year. Battled through injuries, very similar to what we talked about women's basketball here early on this summer. A lot of those other teams that, maybe weren't necessarily there, but still had a great season. And I think it just goes to show with Coach Henson's team, we saw a lot of different players have a lot of different impacts on this team. And it wasn't as, I wouldn't necessarily say experience, because we have quite a few coming back, which is a great thing going into this next season. But I think it was kind of a little bit of a growing year after having a lot of those staples in that roster finally graduate, move on to great things the last 2 years. And so it was a little bit of a learning year for this group, but I think there's a lot of promise that we saw from last year that should get us excited for this next season.
For sure. And I think this team has a lot of young talent, and you kind of said it was a growing year, but looking at how they did last season, they did better than they did last season. They pinched out more games. They were just under 500 the previous season. So for them to be just over 500 this season, it shows that they are growing, and I'm just excited to see what they can do this fall because they do have a lot of young talent. It's kind of feeling the ropes out a little bit, so they should be in good shape for this next season.
Yeah, I love soccer season because this team is always exciting even when they're not winning games. They find ways to keep it close, to battle. And the GLIAC was really interesting this year because you had teams at the top like Northern, who we've seen over the past few years really grow into their own. But then, your typical perennial powerhouses like Grand Valley. And then even Davenport this year was really tough. Those teams at the top played us really, really hard. And we had a tough time beating those teams. The teams at the bottom of the conference, we beat up on pretty good. Roosevelt and Parkside a couple of times. But even Parkside, Purdue Northwest, those games were close. And I think the disparity in the GLIAC was definitely something that was interesting this year. Us playing very well against the bottom teams and not so well against the top teams in terms of results. So that's the next step, I think, is just how can we put ourselves back in that top 2 or 3 spot in the GLIAC?
Yeah, the GLIAC was very tough this year. I'm glad you brought that up, Brody. And one thing that was very tough for this team that hasn't been as tough on them in years past, playing on our home field was a lot more difficult than usual this year. I don't know what it is about it. If it was reseated differently, I don't know if they changed the stands a little bit, moved it 5 inches over and threw all the good luck out or something. But we were 3-5-3 overall in home games last year, and then 5-1 on the road. It's great to see them winning in opposing fields, at opposing stadiums, right? That's a great thing to have. Shows the sign of a great team to go on the road, do your job, make it a business trip, and get home. But man, it was really tough at home for some of these games. Obviously, played quite a few good teams at home, right? Obviously playing Northern Michigan at home, playing Michigan Tech at home, Grand Valley, Davenport, those top teams, so on and so forth. But I think it really goes to show that there's definitely going to be some sort of maybe a change going into maybe the routine, maybe next year, just trying to find some ways to squeak out a couple more wins at home, because they had some great wins this year. I mean, winning against Michigan Tech in mid-October on that Sunday after really getting dominated by Northern Michigan, that was a really statement bounce back win for this team. But then after that, they go on a little bit of a skid, going to Davenport, leaving, I believe, win a tie, a 0-0 tie, even though we had chances to win that game multiple times, then losing at home to Grand Valley in a tough 2-0 loss, and then going to Saginaw Valley, who was another very underrated team this year.
Yeah.
And so there was just a couple really tough stretches for this team, but we definitely saw some bright spots. I mean, Haley Buckman really had a great season filling in at the top of the goal scorer. Catherine Welch had that also 5 goals on the season, tying Buckman, but she was definitely, as we mentioned, had a lot of extra pressure, a lot of extra attention after the breakout season she had last year. Saw some great things as well. Morgan Filion was great for this team filling in last year, or with Morgan Kwabatsky. I think that was really good to have that 1-2 punch. And it sounds like both of them were probably going to be back this year. Obviously, Lowe dealing with an injury, and hopefully she bounces back better than ever. But I think there's a lot of great pieces as well that we saw kind of inserted in. Some goal scorers, right? That we saw a lot of couple players getting a lot of playing time, but not necessarily a few players getting all the playing time. So Coach Henson, especially with this also massive recruiting class, I can't even memorize all the names. There's so many of them, which is a good problem to have. I think it's going to be interesting to see the strategy in putting that best 11 on the field this fall.
Yeah, it's an interesting roster construction just because there were players on the team who have been around for the Final Four run even a few years ago. You know, you look at the captain, Lindsay Cole, who had been a leader on this team for a couple of years. She'd been around since the Final Four team. You got 2 backline players in Bella Valoni and Ella Wolf, who are freshmen on the Final Four team, and now they're already going into their senior season, which just feels crazy. But then you've got, you know, your star, if you will, and Catherine Welch up front, who drew so much attention. She was only a sophomore, and you think of all the things she's already accomplished in her career, but she's got another 2 years left. So it's an interesting roster construction. I think that makes for a good challenge for Coach Henson. You know, he's got the players at the top, the leadership group, the consistent players, but then you got to find some other people to step up. And that was what we started to see towards the end of the season. You know, Emerson Lukomsky at the end of the year scored a goal, which was huge for her. Ava Fuller, same thing. Natalia Levins got going towards the end of the season. So when those young players start to take the steps and fill in those roles behind the top players, the veterans, the leaders, that's where this team can really grow. And I think that's what they can do this year. It's what we've been working for towards the past couple seasons. And I'm hoping that this upcoming fall is the year that it all clicks.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you can have a team with a lot of great players, but how well are you guys working together? And I think they're still in the process of figuring out how they work together. And I mean, that shows a little bit with their record. And it should be, I don't know. I think it's harder to win games when you're away, but maybe it's easier for this team. I don't know, but it seems as though they have a little bit to figure out with that team dynamic. And I mean, it's only going to get a little bit more difficult with all these new people coming in, but having so many strong returners, I think they can make it work.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing too when you win more games on the road. Like Tatum was just saying, you know, maybe it's just one of those fluky things where we had some of our better games on the road. We pulled out wins. We had some of our worst games at home. We didn't pull out the win. It feels really strange that we only won 3 games at home and we look back and say, this was a good team.
Yeah.
You know, because we were a good team. We were right there in the GLIAC. We had a home playoff game too in the GLIAC quarterfinals. Unfortunately, lost to Davenport, but it's a strange thing. It's one of those statistical anomalies where you kind of just scratch your head and you say, how does a team that was good this season only win 3 games at home?
It could be a complacency thing too, I feel like, because it is harder to play games that are away. So when teams are coming, they're coming hard and they're really trying to, you know, win the game on your court and in your home and in your field, whatever it may be. So I think maybe just having a little bit of like we got to defend our field type attitude. I can't really speak for them, but I don't know.
It's like you want to steal the protect the pound that hockey has and like put that around the fencing of the field or something.
Yeah.
It just needs like a different mantra. That's what it kind of feels like with this team. And the stats are certainly, I mean, Brody used the word perfectly, head scratching. Get this, in 11 home games last year, we took 180 shots. 15 of them found the net.
Yeah.
Look at the comparison of the away games. We played 8 on the road last year, so obviously a couple less, but half the number of shots and only 2 less goals. 90 shots, 13 goals scored. That is crazy to think the shot percentage goes up 14.4% on the road compared to 8.3% at home. That doesn't seem like a big number as far as, maybe you don't know the soccer stats. That isn't crazy differential. I mean, talk about the number of shots that you have against a team, right? Against a good team, it might be 6. And in the theoretical, comparison of math, you need, in this case, almost double the amount of shots to be able to score in the net. Against some of those tough teams, that is tough to do when it comes to quality. So you can definitely tell the quality of shots on the road, maybe the ball control. I noticed in some of the games was a little bit better as well. And maybe that'll be something they try to implement at home games this year. Then again, like we said, might just be kind of one of those fluky things where all the chips were put in on their away games as far as all the good luck, and then the bad luck just kind of rolls over into the home games, just based on how the schedule was, which, of course, Coach Henson, like a lot of the coaches here at Ferris State, which good problem to have, love the strength of schedule to be very tough on these girls.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's why it's good to be a fan sometimes and not involved with the team, because we don't have to figure out what the reason was for the statistical difference between home and away. We just get to go out there as fans and watch the soccer team play. But as far as the strength of schedule, Coach Henson, he kind of throws them to the wolves right away. You got regional games the entire way, and that sets the tone for the rest of your season. Unfortunately, we tied against Cedarville at home and Findlay at home, lost to Ashland at home to start our season in non-conference play, but regional play. The only win we picked up was at Indianapolis, which, again, home versus away early in the season already playing a factor. So, yeah, I mean, there's no warm-up for Coach Henson's teams. They get in there and they play right away against regional opponents. And I think that was one of the things that a team that was maybe a little underrated and overlooked that went to the Final Four was because they faced such a difficult schedule. The GLIAC was really good in 22. They played tough non-conference games, regional opponents at the beginning of the season. That paved the way for, again, a lot of people probably didn't look at that team as Final Four capable, but they proved everybody wrong. So the schedule is certainly something that helps this team. And if the GLIAC's going to be as good as it was this past year coming into the fall, they're going to need to be tough in the region again.
Absolutely.
Well, and you sparked a thought, not to keep speaking about the Final Four season, but I vividly remembered that year they weren't even sure they were going to make it into the tournament.
Correct.
Yeah. Or it was GLIACs or something. I think they got upset in GLIACs and they weren't even sure they were going to make it into the tournament, and they all thought their season was over. And I remember one of them telling me like, we made it in, but like it's a secret still, like whatever. They ended up making it all the way to the Final Four, and I feel like that definitely reflects what this team is capable of. Like they may not look like they're a Final Four team throughout the season, but like they play up to that level when they need to. And I think if they just use that mentality for this next season, there's no reason they can't make it back there.
I mean, if there was ever a team that embraced the mantra of tougher and grittier, it's this team. Their mantra or their motto in the locker room is fight for the right to play in bad weather, right? Like that's that's their thing. So just that underdog, that gritty mentality is what's carried this team a lot. And I do think that as these younger players evolve and take more of a leadership role, take more of a goal scoring role, a prominent role on the team, that's the type of style we're going to see, is that grittier, physical, more hard-nosed, top to bottom of the lineup type of play. And that's what brought this team to a Final Four. And boy, it would be awesome to get them back, because it'd be so cool.
I agree. And there's nothing, and I feel like that year they definitely played like there was nothing to lose. And there's nothing more frustrating than playing a team who plays like that, because when they have nothing to lose, they're just going for everything. And that is so frustrating to play against. So I think if they take a little bit more of that mentality, like they'll be dangerous next year.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's going to be very interesting to see how they change their look, because this is a very mentally tough team. As you mentioned, Tatum, I mean, the Final Four, getting to that point, they had won the GLIAC the year before, I believe, right, in 2021, had shown that they can compete with the top of the top. And then especially, I mean, we got to experience, right, from our good friend Chandler, how cold it was in those games they won over in Bemidji, beating Grand Valley, beating the Beavers on their home field. And so that team really kind of set the tone for the program going into the next 3 years of, hey, we might not be the most talented. We might not be we might not have the tangibles to some of these other teams across the country, out west or maybe out on the East Coast, as far as just, size and speed. But we're going to be the ones that fight the hardest until the final bell rings. That's going to be our mentality. Throw us in a parking lot and we're going to come out on top. We're going to find a way. We're going to be resilient. And this team has really embraced that. And a lot of the key players that we've mentioned have definitely been that. And one thing thing I'll notice too, not to harp on last season statistically too much more, but the defense especially won a lot of those big games that we played. When you look at the wins, overall goals allowed, they only allowed 4 in 8 wins last year. In the 7 losses, 18 goals given up. So when the defense has been rock solid, not only does that prevent other teams from scoring, but it gives your offense freedom of opportunity to say, hey, we're going to let it rip because we know we got a defense behind us. I think that statistically really helps a team win as far as looking at probabilities and, number of quantity of shots goes up. The quality is obviously hopefully going to be there and they're going to find the back of the net. But it also just gives you that confidence of like, hey, our defense has got us, so let's attack. And even if we get beat and counterattack the other way, we got a brick wall ready for them on the other side.
Absolutely. And that's what Coach Henson's teams are built on is strong defensive play and good goalkeeping, right? And, last year, Lauren Koboski is a senior, as the goalkeeper, she played well to start of the season, and then they found out that Morgan, as a freshman, was really good and deserved more playing time. So they kind of started splitting, and then Morgan took the starting job as a freshman, and she had a really, really good year. So relying on those two as the backstop, and then the defensive line of the tandem of Bella Valoni and Ella Wolf, who have been here for a couple years. This will be their 4th year now. They're, Coach used to say that they're not freshmen even in their freshman year. They had played so many games already. Mm-hmm. So just relying on that strong defensive core is a really big bonus for this team. That's what Coach Henson's teams like to do. They've always been good defensively. And if that offensive prowess, that offensive firepower can pick up just a little bit, this is absolutely a lethal team.
Absolutely.
I think if you can keep teams from scoring, I think that's a great asset to have on a team, because you can be a great scoring team, but if teams are scoring against you, then it's not doing much. But I think for them just to be able to just clean up the offense just a little bit, score a couple more goals here and there, I think they'll be a great team. I think the fact that they are able to keep teams from scoring, though, shows a lot of their potential. That's how Davenport was able to be so good last year. They weren't an elite offensive team, but they were so good defensively. I mean, we played them 3 times, and there were 3 total goals scored between the two teams. So it was a 1-1 tie, a 0-0 tie, and a 1-0 win for Davenport. Those are, I understand soccer is not the highest scoring sport. Those are low scoring games. To play 2 teams, 3 games to only score 3 combined goals it speaks to the defensive ability of both of those teams. And if either team, if Davenport or Ferris State next year can find that offensive firepower, that spark, they're going to be top of the GLIAC. I mean, that's just the nature of the game.
Absolutely. And I would have to imagine, I'm not going to go out there and say, the numbers exactly say this because I don't know, but you would have to imagine for a lot of the opportunities playing in some of these big games that defense does win championships, as cliche as it sounds, just because of the fact that if you bank on the scoring, right, and the defense isn't as solid, like if your defense is good, it gives you more opportunities as far as how you can control the game in order to win the game in the long run. And we saw that a couple times in that Final Four run, not to bring it up even more. But winning those games, I think it was against Grand Valley 0-0 going into the 9th round of PKs when Bella Sabo sent us through on that last PK. But I think it'll be interesting. And looking at next year, right, we'll talk about some breakout candidates here in just a moment, but they're going to be playing some tough games, right? They're going to be playing Lewis to start the season officially, I believe, on August 30th at home on Saturday. Then they're going to Cedarville. Then they're playing Indianapolis. Then they're going to Findlay, right? These really tough teams to start the year. They're going to go to Walsh, who is another very good team. No Ashland, I believe, on this year's schedule, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're not going to have competition going into the regular conference slate, because our first GLIAC game of the year at home against who else but the Panthers that ended our season last year. So that'll be a very good start to the season. Revenge game, we hope, on that Friday afternoon. But it'll be very interesting to see what Coach Henson has as far as personnel. Obviously, we know there's a lot of good recruits coming in, but there's a lot of players, right, that have shown right over the last couple of years that they can be dependent on, right? Welchie, one of them, Bucky, right? Both of those forwards have been key goal scorers for us. We've had rock solid infield play as well, or midfield, not infield. I'm still thinking about softball from last night. That's beyond the point. With Izzy Barron as well. Losing Lindsay Cole, that's a big loss, right? Yeah. Who's going to replace her on the wing? Because that's an essential position in how Coach Henson runs his scheme. That will be very interesting, but I think especially we saw players like Ava Fuller really play that well. Even Brinley Bell kind of slotted herself, really a versatile player that was able to play that position very well. I believe as well, Brinley finished number 2 on the team in points last year with 11, only trailing Catherine Welch with 16, and then Bucky was right behind with 10. But obviously we mentioned defensively, right? Bella and Ella rock solid. There's the 2 center backs. But it'll be very interesting to see who has really solidified themselves as those cornerstone midfielders, because that especially is where we've seen, not necessarily saying that position alone is what lost us a lot of games last year, but we'll see as far as if they change things up to trying to maybe get a little bit more aggressive in the midfield to try to get that offensive, dominance established against some of these good teams that might be very good defensively, or if they maybe take the defensive approach a little bit, play some, maybe not necessarily elite goal scorers, but good on-ball defenders, good IQ players that can read passes, intercept them, and turn them into counterattacks, because there's a lot of options for how many midfielders played last year as far as their position right. Megan Buchanan played a couple games last year. Annie Hartley was a staple in there as well in the midfield. Juliana Bernal played a couple games last year as a senior. So there will definitely be some interesting holes to fill, right? Reese Carmody's kind of played that midfield, also played in that forward role, as well as Brindley Bell, right? Those listed midfielders, but it'll be interesting to see at that position what Coach Henson wants to do. Maybe it just changes by the opponent. Maybe it just changes at the hot hand like goaltending was last year, because Lowe did play well. She kind of got in a little bit of a slump, and then obviously we saw the greatness there from our very good, talented freshman goalkeeper and Morgan Fillion that really kind of took that role and ran with it. So it might just be we have so many great pieces. It might just be we figure out which one works and roll with it, or it might be very matchup dependent against some of these good defensive teams like Davenport, like Grand Valley, and then you change it obviously for offensive teams like the Juggernaut in Northern Michigan.
Yeah, and how does the incoming class fit into that? We got 11 freshman additions coming in. 3 of them are listed as midfielders. Now, obviously, a lot of that can change based on how they adapt to the college game and things of that nature, where they played in high school versus where they're going to fit in college. But 3 listed midfielders, right? So to your point, Brandon, is who's filling that spot? Could be a freshman. Very easily could be. I believe we're up to 3 transfers now, as we just landed another transfer a couple weeks ago. Wow. Actually, a couple months ago at this point, but a goalkeeper. So I think that makes 3 transfers. That means 14 new players on this team. That's a lot of work to do in the summer and in the brief time that they're here for fall camp before the season starts, in terms of just getting everyone on the same page, implemented into the system, and ready to go for the start of the season. So who fills those roles? It's very possible that it's one of the large incoming class, number of players in that class. So
everyone's a breakout player.
Exactly. Every one of them could be. And we'll see what ends up happening. Coach Henson's usually not afraid to play 2 to 3 freshmen. We've seen that the past couple of years. And with the size of this class, it's probably likely that'll be the case again.
Yeah, it's just going to have to be a competition for them every single day. But honestly, that creates the best teams, especially teams with bench depth. I always say bench depth, but I think that is just such an asset to have on a team. And I think they can use that to their advantage this next season. So I'm excited to see who's out there, who's making a difference, who's stepping up. So yeah.
Pressure makes diamonds.
Yeah.
Battle for your spot.
Definitely does.
Absolutely. Let's get to the good stuff here. Let's get you to our breakout picks. Tatum or Brody, you can rock, paper, scissors for who goes first.
Tatum, you got it. Go ahead.
I was going to just go first anyway.
All right. Go ahead, Tatum. Give us what you got.
I'm picking Emerson Lukomsky because she's out there quite a bit and she's very stable as a player, but I think she'll be someone that can step up this next season. I think we saw a little bit of her stepping up towards the end of the season, and I think her going into her junior year, she'll be a strong player for them.
Nice. Yeah. We definitely saw, and obviously later in the season was really when we used her the most and was kind of the hot foot, if you would even say, down the stretch. So that's a good pick. Brody, who do you got?
I'm going to go with Ava Fuller, who will be in her sophomore season. She started 11 games last year, so she saw the field quite a bit for a freshman who wasn't, maybe at the top of the class. When you talk about playing time in terms of like Natalia, maybe was probably up at the top of the freshman class, but Ava played a lot as a freshman. She scored in that blowout home game against Roosevelt. Remember, we won 7-0, and a lot of new players were able to get in on the scoring action. And sometimes just late in the season, seeing the first one go in the back of the net. We talk about that with guys in hockey all the time. Just getting that monkey off your back, seeing it go in the back of the net is huge. And I think that's what happened for Ava at the end of the season. Maybe took some of the pressure off her and saying, okay, there's the first one. Don't got to worry about that anymore. Now let's get to improving. So I like Ava. She's tall, she's fast, she's strong, and she's got a great shot. So I like her ability to be a breakout player going into her sophomore season, another player that we can rely on up front.
Absolutely. And Coach Henson showed that he was very confident in her ability, slotting her in there in the second half of the season, even more in the starting lineup. So I think that's a great pick indeed.
She's one of those players too that might not necessarily just be a goal scorer. She can do a lot of other things, and that's always a way for Coach Henson to like your game a lot more.
Yeah, her touch line control was very impressive. Watching that, in front of us here at the press box last year, I think was very impressive. A lot of players also fall into that category as well with just overall footwork and ball control. I'm going to go with somebody. This might seem like a little bit of is that really a breakout pick? But I don't care. I have the microphone, so I'm going to go ahead and pick. I'm going to pick Izzy Barron. And the reason why is because she's been a very good player for us over the last couple of years. A core player, has played quite a few games. And obviously, everybody remembers, right, that Michigan Tech game that I referenced earlier. She had the game-winning goal, I believe, back the first goal in that game that ended up helping us get over the hump against the Huskies. She played in 19 games last year. 16 of them she started. She only had 4 points, even though she had 15 shots, and quite a few of them were quality. I believe 7 of them total on goal. She just didn't necessarily get the same looks that I think she got her freshman year. And obviously, with the type of caliber player that she can be, right, with her size and speed, I think she can definitely capitalize as far as, maybe the forwards are going to be certainly very much looked on by the other defensive players in the box from how good Bucky was last year, how good we saw Welch, her freshman, and even sophomore year. I think she could get more looks, and I think she could fill that midfield role. And I think she can have that bounce back mentality as far as shooting, but also distributing. She had 2 assists last year, showing that she can be an elite facilitator. So I think she could have a breakout year of maybe we see her in the 8-point category, maybe up even into double digits. I think she has that potential, and I think she might be one of those experienced young players now that'll have that step-up season in order to get this team over the hump.
That's one thing that I think is underrated is if there are 2 players alongside Welch up front that can score at a high level, that takes so much pressure off of her. Mm-hmm. And that top line of Welchie, Bucky, and then Izzy, if she can break out in her junior season, I mean, that would be the offensive firepower that we need to balance with the defense.
Absolutely. I think it's there. I think we didn't even mention a incoming freshman transfer, red shirt, right? There's so many options out there. These are just 3 of what could be many, it feels like, for this team. It's going to be very exciting to see in early fall practice to see how this team lines up.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I think we've shown steps after that Final Four run. People forget we graduated a good portion of not only our scoring, but of our minutes played.
Oh, yeah.
Specifically at key spots. So it's been a trend of moving in the right direction since then. Now it's, can we get back to that same level of play? And I think this is the year that we can prove we can.
I agree.
Can't wait to see how it all turns out. Thank you all for tuning in. We got our first fall sport under our belts. Maybe we'll get into Tatum's next week. I don't know. What are you feeling, Tatum? Should we get to your sport next week, or should we put it off and wait even longer?
Oh, I don't know. I thought we were doing cross country.
All right, fine. We'll do cross country next week, but stay tuned. We got football and volleyball on deck later on this month. So be sure you follow along at Behind_Bulldogs. Follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, WBRN.com, or you can listen on 107.7 FM at 3 o'clock each and every Saturday. Great show, guys. I guess we'll see you next week.
Yep.
Take care, everybody.